The snow was coming down sideways, a real blizzard on the coldest night of the year. That's when Karen, our HOA president, decided to strike. Through my window, I saw her, posting eviction papers right on the front door of Mrs. Alvarez, an elderly widow who lived down the street.
Ow.
Neighbors watched from their darkened homes, silent. Mrs. Alvarez stood there on her porch, trembling in the bitter cold, clutching the folded flag that had belonged to her late husband. Karen's voice cut through the wind, declaring that unpaid dues meant immediate removal, no mercy. She recited the HOA bylaws like they were gospel, giving Mrs. Alvarez just 48 hours to get out. The temperature was plummeting, and to make matters worse, the widow's heater had mysteriously stopped working earlier that day. Karen just shrugged it off, blaming some bureaucratic delay in the maintenance committee. But something about the whole scene, especially the paperwork, felt wrong. Dangerously wrong. See, I'm a property litigation attorney, and I've been quietly observing the HOA's patterns for a while. One thing I know for sure is that fraud always leaves a trail. I walked over and calmly asked Karen if I could see certified copies of the court documents. She immediately refused, hiding behind confidential board authority. Her whole act was built on intimidation, but I wasn't buying it. As I got a closer look at the eviction notice she was holding, I noticed things. The court seal looked a little distorted. The judge's signature slanted at an unnatural angle. The case number had weird spacing, and the biggest red flag of all, the filing date was stamped for a Sunday. Our courts are never ever open on a Sunday. I took pictures of every single page. Mrs. Alvarez whispered to me that she felt she was being targeted. Ever since her husband, a man who had actually built many of the homes in our neighborhood, had passed away, the fines started piling up. First, it was a mailbox height violation that appeared out of nowhere. Then, weekly penalties for holiday decorations. Suddenly, there were landscaping infractions she'd never had before. Each charge seemed designed to inflate her bill. All the while, Karen stood there smirking, with a moving truck already waiting nearby, its engine rumbling like a predator. That night, I drove downtown to the courthouse, determined to get to the bottom of it. I pulled the official court dockets. Just as I suspected, there was no eviction case for Mrs. Alvarez. The case number on Karen's papers didn't exist. The judge she'd listed wasn't even assigned to that court. It was a complete fabrication. The seal was copied from old litigation, the signature scanned from an archived document. She had brazenly forged court orders to throw an elderly widow out into a blizzard. I didn't waste a second. I filed for an emergency injunction, attaching sworn affidavits and all the time-stamped photos as evidence. I requested an expedited hearing for sunrise. Judges, thankfully, do not take kindly to the exploitation of seniors. The next morning, Karen waltzed into the courtroom, overdressed and oozing false confidence, proudly carrying her packet of forged documents. Her attorney, however, looked a lot less sure of himself. I calmly presented the certified docket confirmations from the court's own records. I pointed out the non-existent case number. I explained the inconsistencies in the falsified judicial signature. You could feel the entire atmosphere in the courtroom shift. Karen's composure started to crack. She tried to vaguely blame it on some clerical error. The judge leaned forward, his voice low and serious. He looked directly at Karen and asked if she had fabricated the documents. The silence in the room was deafening. Her attorney desperately requested a recess, but the judge denied it flatly. He made it crystal clear. Forgery, especially when targeting a protected senior citizen, is a criminal offense. He immediately referred the case to the district attorney's office. He granted a protective stay for Mrs. Alvarez, freezing all HOA enforcement actions against her. You could hear gasps all around the courtroom as neighbors exchanged stunned looks. Outside, the movers who had been waiting at Mrs. Alvarez's house packed up and left without touching a single box. By that afternoon, her utilities were back on, with the bill sent directly to the HOA. The fallout was swift and severe. The court ordered an independent financial audit of the HOA and issued subpoenas for all of the board's communications. The patterns we found were disturbing. A clear history of selective fines targeting vulnerable homeowners. Fabricated meeting minutes used to approve actions after the fact. Unauthorized money transfers between association accounts. and Karen's signature was on everything, often with suspiciously altered authorization lines and records of votes taken without enough board members present. Weeks later, the formal criminal charges came down: forgery, fraud, and elder exploitation. Her presidency came to a sudden, screeching halt, though his insurance carrier dropped their liability coverage, and civil lawsuits from other homeowners started piling up against the board. Mrs. Alvarez got to keep her home, her dignity fully intact. The flag her husband was given stayed right where it belonged, above her fireplace. Many of the neighbors who had stayed silent came to her and apologized. It was a long road to rebuild community trust. But it started with transparent new elections and an independent oversight committee. The bylaws were completely rewritten with proper legal review. As the winter thawed into spring, the snow melted, but the consequences of Karen's actions remained on the public record. The woman who once ruled our neighborhood through fear and intimidation was now spending her days answering to prosecutors and lawyers. Court dates had replaced her HOA meetings. I saw Mrs. Alvarez a few months later. She was out in her yard, planting flowers, bright, beautiful colors lining her porch. It was a powerful reminder. Documentation defeated deception. The paper trail exposed every single lie. Karen had tried to evict a vulnerable widow from her home, but in the end, the only person she evicted was herself, right out of power. Thanks for watching, and remember to look out for your neighbors. Follow for more stories.